So this is Crochet Physiology Part 3, and what I'm going to do is show you the first and most basic of the crochet stitches after a chain stitch. So that's called a double crochet or a single crochet. Now there is a difference between American and English terms. Most patterns use American terms, and so this stitch I'm going to show you would be called a double crochet, but in English patterns it would be called a single crochet. I don't think it really makes any difference. What you start with is a chain, as I have here, and if you keep going with your chain a little bit longer, I'll show you where you're going to work into. Now, the next row, you're going to work into that chain from this end to this end. So you go from right to left, working in each individual chain as you go along. So you'll always do, for a single crochet or a double crochet, one more chain than you want, because that's what takes you up a step to work along, and then up a step on the next row to work along that way. So you can either work into the V stitch at the front, or you can turn it over and you can work into the bump at the back. From my perspective, it gives you a slightly neater finish if you work into the bump in the back. So what I'm going to do is work into the second chain from the hook. So here's my hook here, there's my first chain, this one here, and there is my second bump. So I'm going to work into this one here, and that's in the second chain here. So if I put my hook back in, what I'm going to do is pop the hook underneath that bump. So you have now got 2 loops on your hook, and if you turn it over, you can see that I have the last chain stitch here, which is the one you're looking at, and then it's going through the next one. What you do after that is just lift up a loop of your yarn and pull it through that first loop. So you're going underneath that chain stitch, and then you're left with 2 loops on the hook, and then you pull through another loop of yarn through both of those together, and that's it. That's your first one done. So you do exactly the same in the next ones. You go along to the next bump, put your hook through it, pick up a loop of yarn, pull it through, then you've got 2 loops on your hook, pull through the next one, those 2 together, and then you've got 2 stitches plus a turning chain here, and I'll show you how that works together in a moment. So if we do a few more of those along this chain, and working into the chain is always the hardest bit of the crochet. So once you've done this, you've done the hardest bit of whatever it is that you're going to do, and everything is much easier from this point onwards. Everybody feels like they want to give up if they've chosen a really long chain to do, but actually you have in fact done the hardest bit at that point. So you can work along as far as you want to go, and then I'll show you, there's your row of single crochet or double crochet in American terms stitches. So you can see for each stitch you have a V here at the front, you have a V on the top, and on the back you have a slightly different picture, a bit like the chain stitch, you have a bump here. So when you're working back along the next row, you'll have another turning chain as you had done here, and then you work another row of these, which obviously as you're going backwards will look opposite than this. So then you do another chain to move up 1 row, you turn it over, there's the back of your piece of crochet, and then you're working into underneath each of the V stitches as you work along. So the first one is this one here. It's easy to miss it, try not to. So you're working right next to your chain stitch, and what you do is you put your yarn, or your hook rather, underneath both strands of yarn, pull the yarn through, so you've got 2 loops on your hook, and pull the yarn through again, both of those, and there you've got your second row double crochet. And you do that again with the next one. So you're going in the next one here, you're going into that little gap that you can see there, underneath both threads, both of the top of the stitch, both of those bits of yarn there, pull it through, pull through both again, and then you've got your second stitch. And if you turn it over, what you can see has happened, Sorry, my fingers. Is that you've gone, here's your next stitch here, there's the V at the front, the V at the top, and you will be going underneath this from the other side. And what you should always do when you're starting out is count the number of stitches that you've got in the first row and make sure that you've got the same number in the next row. So you find your next gap, which is under here, in between the two bumps. Find the next one, pull the yarn through, pull it through the next stitch. And then in this last one here, you can see that you've just got one more V left. And work into that. Underneath both parts of the V stitch, pull your yarn through and then pull through both of them. And then you should have the same number of stitches and it should look relatively even. So there, what was the back previously has now become the front again, and you can see for each of them you have a little V stitch here and you have a V stitch along the top like this. And this is how I count the number of stitches that I've got. So I'll start with this one, so go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 stitches along the top. And if you have 8 stitches in each row, you know you've done well. The easiest way to get that wrong is to forget to work into the first stitch or forget to work into the last stitch. And if you find that you're not having the right number of stitches or it looks a little uneven along the edges, either it's supposed to work that way and you may need to change your tension, or you've dropped a stitch or forgotten one at some stage. And that's it.